You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObscast.com. Okay, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast. We're here today for episode 74. As always, I'm Cameron Crane, executive editor for TVObsessive.com, and I'm joined by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. How you doing today, Ryan?
Doing pretty well today. Was there anything on this week that you watched? Anything happened that caught your attention?
Tuesday was the NFL trade deadline,
Yes,
and
exactly. Exactly.
my Detroit Lions got an edge rusher from the Cleveland Browns.
Yes. Yes. I
That was
knew
pretty
Detroit was
good.
going to be in the news for something. Yeah.
Yeah. Then of course it was the election on Tuesday. We mentioned last week, that we were both going to be sickos and watch the election night coverage. I presume you did. How many hours? How late did you stay up watching?
Yeah, I actually went to sleep about 1 a.m. Central. I guess that would be right after Fox News called Pennsylvania and essentially, sealed the deal. So at that point, I said, okay, well, others haven't, but probably will follow suit. So probably okay time to turn it off for the night.
Pretty much the same, I think, right? Because I think at that point it was at 267, and I was looking at it, I was like, well, Alaska has three, and that,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
that's, anyhow, and then there'd been I don't know, from what you put in our notes, you've been watching, postmortems and you know
Yeah, I
Daily
just
Show stuff, or
I just really don't, and I said this last week. I just really don't know what's wrong with me because I watched I don't know how many hours Tuesday night, and then tried to catch at least pieces of what all the late night hosts said about the results. I went back and tried to catch as much of the Daily Show live thing that I could. I was flipping back and forth between MSNBC and CNN, and when the coverage was happening, so caught some of the Daily Show, caught the late night hosts, learned about this, then went back and rewatched some of this Steve Kornacki stream or webcam that he had on him the whole night. Yeah, it just was a
that was
kind of a
weird.
consumed my media for a couple of days, and I think my biggest takeaway from that is, um, oddly, Jimmy Fallon just needs to stop talking about stuff like this.
Yeah,
I mean, he was while Colbert and Kimmel and Myers and Stewart, all had these, really nice sort of uh, passionate, no matter whether you agree with him or not, sort of passionate commentary about the election. Fallon goes on and is talking about, oh, be the first president under White House arrest, haha, those types of things. It's just
mm.
very lighthearted and not really getting to the subject of, where people are coming from. So I'd rather have just not say anything at all than try to go the, just quippy joke route. But that's sort of what we got.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm prone to agree with you. I mean, insofar as I didn't watch any of the stuff that you're talking about now. I've just found myself completely uninterested,
Yeah.
which is kind of odd, being who I am and my history of tending to watch the late night comedy shows and all of that. And I find myself in the space of thinking like, I just don't know that I'm going to do that anymore. I just don't know
Yeah.
that I want to. I mean, did you find it helpful? Did you find it entertaining? Did you find it cathartic? I guess I just feel like I don't
Yeah.
even know if I want the comedy of the next 4 years that we're going to get in
Yeah,
terms
I
of that.
can't say I found it to be any of those things. Maybe the most interesting was Stewart because they were live and they could
Yeah.
sort of read the tea leaves, and he before signed off had some very poignant things to say. But then it's just guys getting up saying how could we, and it's just not what you're looking for. But like I said, I would have much rather seen Kimmel break down emotionally than what Fallon did. But in the end, it's probably none of it's worth anything.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know because we immediately went through. I don't know. I mean, we won't talk about this very much more, people. I apologize for even talking about it. Really, you said, well, we'll turn it into a TV podcast for good times. But anyway, I mean, focusing on the TV aspect of it, I
Yeah,
mean, we went through the Trump presidency from 2016 to 2020. And I always felt like there was a certain difficulty in terms of the comedy, right? Of like trying to do satire or whatever, like wasn't particularly funny. At least that was how things landed for me. And so the idea of just, I don't know, just more of that,
yeah, yeah,
um, it's not striking me as terribly appealing. It is what it is. I have to reconcile myself to the reality of it. I just don't know that I'm going to find things like the Daily Show
Yeah.
entertaining.
No.
And that kind of sucks, but
Yeah. I will, maybe as the last epilogue of all this, I will watch Saturday Night Live this week. I don't know if you remember 8 years ago, famously, Kate McKinnon got up in the cold open as Hillary Clinton and sang Hallelujah, and they really got raked over the coals for that. Yeah, just sort of silly decisions. I'm very curious how they handle it this time.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe I'll even do that again. Yeah, Maya Rudolph,
Is that Andy
singing
Samberg out
Modest
there?
Mouse or something. I don't know. Anyhow,
Lighter news. We need some lighter news.
lighter news. Beyond that kind of stuff, I've been keeping up on season 2 of The Floor,
Mm.
which I do enjoy, and is nice. Relatively mindless kind of entertainment. As you know, I like game shows. There are some little differences with season 2, and have some. These are really minor quibbles, but I guess I just want to say to the people like making The Floor. I think I know why you did what you did, and I disagree
Okay.
because they're well. First of all, they have more people. Yeah, it's fine, and no problem with that. But to my recollection, in season 1, whenever they randomly selected whatever someone,
Yeah.
Rob Lowe would read off all of the categories that were a possibility for them to select.
Okay.
And this season, they're not doing that. Like he'll mention a couple of them, and the text is there on the screen, which is kind of
Yeah.
awkward to read with how it is. It's like written on the floor that they're standing on.
Oh, okay.
So like, okay, I guess I could read it myself. But yeah, I mean, I kind of get the feeling like they are saying, yeah, we don't really need to do that for the sake of time. We can tighten this up. Um, and maybe I'm just a weirdo, but it's kind of bothered me. Like, I think I wanted to give it a little more space to breathe,
Yeah.
maybe a couple of ways. And then the other thing I'm not sure how I feel about is they added this a possibility of getting a 5-second time boost,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting. And I don't even know. Have you even watched the show yet, Ryan?
I watched 1 or 2 episodes when you first talked about it, but not
Okay.
getting from this season.
So, at least if at least you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to explain the whole show again to people who are listening who haven't seen the show. You can check it out. But they're identifying things on a timer, and then that's how the showdown works. So they made it so that if you win a few challenges in a row, you get a 5-second time boost that you can then decide to use or not use. Um, and I guess that's kind of interesting,
Yeah.
overall, it just feels like the people who are on season 2 of The Floor, of course, watch season 1 of The
Yeah.
Floor,
Yeah.
and the way that they're being strategic is making it just a little less entertaining to me, I guess.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's sort of this balance between people figure out how to game the game and they're trying to figure out how to make it more, entertaining, add more wrinkles, all this, and it's like, which one do you want to which way do you want to pursue?
Yeah, I guess maybe the time boost is actually a good idea. Maybe. I did see in one episode someone who used the time boost and still lost, right? So it's not like a guarantee that
Okay.
you're going to win, but you know, whatever. It's fine. I still enjoy the show, and that's what I've been on. I've been meaning
It,
to get
it,
back to some other things like English teacher, and I haven't yet. What about you?
Reminds
Anything else?
reminds me of when people started complaining, when they realized the best strategy on Jeopardy was to go for the big clues and the daily double hunting, and people hated that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good comparison because it's like
Yeah.
when I first started watching The Floor, like, oh man, if I were in there, I'm just going for it, just yeah, I'm going to challenge the person with the most spaces, win tonight's money, and all of that. And people are being kind of more strategic and saying like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I really know about musical instruments. I'll go back to The Floor, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it is a good comparison to how the best Jeopardy players jump all around searching for the daily doubles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a viewer, I would find it more entertaining if they would just run down the categories from
Yeah.
easiest to hardest. You
Yeah.
know, so it is kind of there's some similarity. Um,
Maybe pivoting to the news a little bit. Speaking of
yeah,
Jeopardy, this isn't really news necessarily, but I can't say I've watched too much Jeopardy since Ken Jennings became the permanent host. But they really got in some hot water this week for a clue that was under a rhyming category. We have a story here we'll link to about this. The answer to the question was men seldom make passes at. The question was, to which a female in glasses answered this question, who are girls who wear glasses? And boy, they are let's just say they're getting it on social media this week for this sort of.
they're getting a little bit. I think you were wrong in how you put it. I don't think she answered. I think someone else got it right.
Oh, is it someone else?
But
Okay.
it happened to be the case that there one female contestant on the show and she wears glasses. I did encounter this. I don't know if it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It's from Dorothy Parker, as I understand it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've certainly
Um,
heard this phrase before. I don't know, just
I don't know that that's an excuse, right?
yeah,
Like, I think it's
yeah.
fair enough to say, like, hey, Jeopardy, it's 2024.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to be trotting out some 100-year-old quote from Dorothy Parker that is a bit demeaning towards women who wear glasses. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you just don't need to do that. I think that's fair. I also don't know if I think it's the most offensive thing in the world. It's just kind of some poor
It's
judgment was
yeah, it's
involved in
certainly
choosing the
not. I
question.
mean, it's yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, clue writers and researchers. Let's do a little bit better next
I
time. But yeah,
wonder about. I
not the end of
mean,
the world.
I would be curious about the any kind of backstory that we'll probably never get here.
Yeah,
But like how did that get through?
pass through the yeah.
No one,
Uh,
no one in the writers' room said, you know what, guys, like maybe not.
Or they
It's
saw the
like,
lineup of contestants and said, we need to swap a clue out real quick, guys. We need to go to the backup clue."
well, I mean, whether they had a woman on wearing glasses at the time or not, it's still just
Yeah,
kind of, well, what are we doing? And again,
exactly.
it was Dorothy Parker, and it's not a complete excuse. It's like there's any number of things from Mark Twain that you wouldn't use,
Yeah.
and it's nothing against Mark Twain. It's just like, oh, that's got racial slurs in it, guys. We got
Yeah.
so
Anyway, no, that just sort of
yeah,
tells you the
that
kind
happened.
of kind of news we have going on this week. Maybe the biggest thing to come out of this week is finally some information about Stranger Things season five. They released something they've done for previous seasons, which is a little teaser that revealed the names of the titles of the 8 episodes for season five. They confirmed that it will come out in 2025. They confirmed that events will take place in fall of 1987, which is a 1 year time jump from season four. So no specific date, no more than that. But this is something they've done in the past, which is we're giving you the names of the titles. Now see what you can decipher from all of that.
Yeah. They didn't tell us how long the episodes are going to be, though, did they?
No, but I can only assume they'll be about 90 minutes each again, like they were last year.
But there's more of them, right? That wasn't the last time around. Was
Yeah.
there only, yeah, only
I think there
two.
were 6. Yeah, now we have 8. Now the buzz around, I think it's episode 2 did not give the complete title. It's just the vanishing of dot dot dot. So we don't know, what character they're referencing. But yeah, for anybody, who may be like me, who's just sort of scrambling, trying to find any sort of little morsels of Stranger Things you can consume. This was, I mean, pretty good little teaser, but yeah, I'm ready for a date and I'm ready for a trailer.
Yeah, at least give us dates. Come on,
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
You know when you're releasing it.
I know. It's either going to be summer as it was in the beginning, or it's going to be, fall, October-ish time frame. So it's one of those two. We know. We just don't have any confirmation yet.
Yeah, probably we'll do it over the summer.
I hope so.
Um,
I hope so.
Coming sooner, something that you mentioned on here before that you're looking forward to is Say Nothing, which you discovered is going to release all at once on the binge model, which we're probably not huge fans of, but
Yeah, we talked about this show, Say Nothing, coming to FX. This is an adaptation of Patrick Radden Keefe novel about sort of several decades of of a story centered around the IRA, Irish Republican Army. And this is debuting on November 14th, so coming up on Thursday, and they've decided to drop all of them at once. And I mean, say what you will about, say, FX doing that with The Bear or other shows. This, to me, did not seem like the type of show that would have gotten that treatment. But here we are. We're going to get 9 episodes all at once, and not even the here's three, and then we're going to go week to week, just sort of all drop it, which they were putting a lot of effort into this. I just thought they would have want to drag out the conversation longer.
Yeah, I don't know how they make these decisions. Sometimes it really feels off. Um, from what I know about the show, it seems like it's going to be a very well produced, well made, well acted, dramatic series. That I don't know that I'll necessarily want to watch multiple episodes of in one sitting.
Yeah, yeah,
So why are we releasing the whole thing on the same day?
yeah,
I
yeah.
really kind of don't get it.
Yeah, I get that from the trailer. I get sort of the sense that the book is a very serious, dramatic retelling of some events. I get the thing they're trying to put in some sort of dark comedic elements into the show, but yeah, this just does not seem like, oh, I cannot wait to watch 5 straight episodes of Say Nothing.
I don't think so. I mean, I am curious to check it out. I think it looks
Yeah,
good, and from what you've said about it and so on, but you know, for me, it's almost a deterrent because it's almost like,
yeah,
oh, well, you mean I've got to immediately get through 9 or 10 hours or
yeah,
whatever, and I'm not going to do that. So I mean, I can watch one a week, and then but are people going to still be talking about it? And
exactly, exactly.
it's just a lot. In contrast, actually, kind of make a little segue here to our last news item. With Fallout, I did
Mm.
feel like the binge model fit.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
that's true. Okay.
Did you ever watch? Did you watch the first season of that?
Yes, I did. I think I did finally finish that first season. Yes.
But that was one where it was kind of like I checked it out. And it was pretty okay. Not so sure about it. All right, I'll watch another episode. Still not so sure about it. And then I got to like episode 3. I was like, okay, you got me. And then I binge
Yeah,
watched the rest of it.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
that makes sense, but it often just feels like whoever's making these decisions aren't doing it on the basis of what the show is.
yeah. And like I said, someday maybe we'll learn these numbers or figure out the data behind these decisions and why it is. I would think, okay, if you're gonna dump something all at once, release it the weekend before Thanksgiving, when people are gonna have a long break and can watch it all then. But no, for Thursday night, and here we go.
I feel like something about Netflix broke people's minds, and all of these streamers are just trying to chase some.
Yeah.
It's like they're always after the Squid Game phenomenon. That's what they
Yes.
want everything ideally to be.
That's
Um,
exactly what I was going to bring up. Squid Game, we know is coming out December 26th. We know it's going to be a binge drop. We also know everybody's going to have 4 or 5 straight days off at that point, and they can just power through it. So I mean, that would make sense.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so I didn't even get to the news item about Fallout, which is that they have cast Macaulay Culkin for season 2, which I'm fairly excited about. Honestly, I don't know who's going to play or anything like that, but
Yeah, I was very intrigued by how he was described, particularly what his character might be in this show. The cast was already good in this, obviously with Walton Goggins and several other characters here. But yeah, and Macaulay Culkin, absolutely. Yeah, I'll find myself tuning back into season 2.
yeah, Macaulay Culkin recently dressed up as Joe Burrow for Halloween, pretty impressively.
That's
So,
right.
and I mean, it was enjoyable in The Righteous Gemstones. He's had a
Yes.
very interesting kind of career.
Oh,
In
yes. Yeah.
contrast to a lot of child stars, he was kind of. It seems to me like he's
Yeah.
probably still getting Home Alone money. I
Oh,
hope,
yeah.
and but then has just done. He just kind of bounced around. He's on indie films, and
I think, sort of late teens, early 20s, he was sort of on a razor's edge there where his life could have gone one of two very different ways. And he's really bounced back and made a really strong career out of everything. Yeah.
yeah, agreed. So looking forward to Fallout season 2. Um, no date on that as of yet. I don't know if that got held up by things last year or where that stands. I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
It's the kind of show where I wouldn't be surprised if season 2 comes out, next year. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So, apologies. We kind of played with the format a little bit, which I think went pretty well, but I don't think I even mentioned at the top. We're going to talk about disclaimer today. It's the
Hey,
finale of disclaimer on Apple TV Plus. So this is episode 7, titled 7 in Roman numerals, which is very stylish and just a great decision. Actually, I'm on board with it. I've actually kind of liked it that it's been like
yeah.
disclaimer Roman numeral 7. Anyway, you call them chapters if you want to, whatever. So this is the finale. Where we'll put in a little bit of music here, and then spoilers will be on the table for everything in disclaimer on Apple TV Plus. So hopefully you watch it. If you haven't, you're free to decide whether you want to keep listening or not. We have covered the previous episodes in the previous weeks. Want to go back and listen to those, and yeah, we'll see you in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we are back to talk about Disclaimer, episode 7, premiering today, November 8th on Apple TV Plus. This series, written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, taken from a 2015 Renee Knight novel of the same name. With episode 7, the finale, we pick up right where we left off at the end of episode 6. Catherine in Stephen's house tells him a different version of events where Jonathan forced himself into her room, threatened her and Nicholas with a knife, and then raped her for hours on end before leaving them behind. The next day, there is some consistency. Jonathan was on the beach with Catherine and Nicholas. He ended up saving Nicholas before drowning in the attempt to do that. Catherine admits that she did nothing to help rescue Jonathan. After finishing her story, Catherine then coincidentally realizes Stephen put something in her tea and she passes out. Once that happens, Stephen, who's got a syringe of chemical products in his pocket, still leaves to go to the hospital to kill Nicholas, but stops right before he does it when Nicholas wakes up and calls out for his mother. Stephen eventually believes Catherine's story and tells Robert the whole series of events before he leaves. Catherine wakes up very quickly and rushes to the hospital where she learns that Robert knows everything, but also learns Nicholas is okay. Stephen, apparently coming to grips with what has happened, burns everything he has relating to Nancy, to Jonathan, to Catherine. Catherine is somewhat furious and divorces Robert, we learn. After Robert seems relieved Catherine was raped instead of involved in an affair. And eventually, at the end, we see Catherine and Nicholas are able to come to some sort of reconciliation. I think the biggest topic of this episode is we see the full version of Catherine's truth, and we are based on that story and based on consequences and decisions from her sequence of events. We're led to believe that this is the truth, and I guess
Yeah,
that's what we're left with here.
yeah, that's what I thought was interesting, and I don't want to I don't know. Yeah, I want to be careful in what I'm about to say, I guess, because it did really feel like, okay, on the one hand, we're getting Catherine's perspective. That's good. That's what I wanted. But then we are really led to believe that is the truth in her perspective.
Yep.
And it's not that I want to question that necessarily. I mean, if it had felt more ambiguous, even, I could imagine myself coming in and saying, believe women, but it
Yeah.
doesn't even really feel ambiguous. And I'm not so in terms of how well the show works. Um, I mean, I guess that's fine. I don't know if this is a criticism or not. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, was, I mean, I guess, got what I expected, which was a full version of her account, which again, certainly is plausible, believable. She was there. She, ha has a justification and an explanation for everything that's happened, and, really is trying to get out of Stephen. Does he not know that his son was this way? And so I think it was more that, we touched on this last week, but maybe it was just a little bit too predictable in a way, a little bit too on the nose for what we were told and shown and tried to move towards with the narrative over the first 6 episodes that, okay, yeah, it actually was just the opposite of what happened. And that's sort of the version that we have here. It just it felt very felt very rushed at the end to me to say, okay, this is the version of the truth. And now because of that, all of these things are going to happen very quickly in sequence at the end of the show. Just now that we know this is what actually happened. Just I don't know, just felt a little disjointed to me here at the end.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would be the source of the criticism that I have, such as it is, because I did find the episode entertaining,
Mhm.
and the series as a whole then I think was pretty good, I would say, I'm not going to ultimately put it on my list of best TV series ever or tell all my friends or write home about it, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
watching it.
yeah,
But maybe it was related to what we're talking about. Maybe what's bothering me just a little bit is the movement of Stephen coming to believe her story. Maybe that's the
yeah,
thing that feels just a little bit, I don't know, wonky or
yeah.
something.
So that's one of my major questions of this is he hears Catherine's story after she passes out. That does not deter him from, I'm calling a taxi right now. I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to take care of the job I started last night. It's just Nicholas waking up that causes him to the last moment to rethink it. Because I was revisiting it today and I thought, oh, there was the photograph he sees at the end when he's burning things. Obviously, Nicholas is in one of those photographs, but he doesn't realize that until after he's made that
Right.
decision to not kill Nicholas. So it's like, well, it would have been, okay, oh, Nicholas observed this. He's been traumatized by it. But no, that's not even there when he makes the decision to say, no, I'm not going to kill him.
Right. So it didn't feel wildly implausible to me, but I guess I had to read it as not necessarily caused directly by Nicholas, waking up and asking for his mother or whatever, but just that there's some time there where it kind of sets in and he's had to sit with Catherine's account and he realizes that there were a lot of signs that his son was the kind of guy who may well have done what she said, including whatever he did to his girlfriend Sasha that caused her to leave Italy and come back to
Yep.
London.
Yep.
And I think that's how that fits in, right? And so Stephen is just realizing that he has been ignoring what was kind of in front of his eyes, which is that his son really like was the kind of guy who
Is the
would rape
monster.
her.
Yeah. Yeah. We got clues from this past two episodes, the different reasons of why Sasha left, the phone calls between Nancy and apparently the mother of Sasha, and just that sort of disdain between them and apparently what she's hearing on the other end. So we're getting clues as to this is who he is. Is it plausible that it would take Stephen this long to understand that that was the truth about who he was? Yeah, I guess so. Specifically if you have these thoughts about who your child is. You have Nancy who wrote a book about a sequence of events. You just sort of adapted that as truth at that point, and you don't want to admit to yourself that something else could have happened. So I do see that as just as a, I don't know. It just seemed very motivated after Catherine passed out to get to that hospital, do this again, and just I don't know, seeing a son sort of brought him back to reality and said, I shouldn't be doing this. I could see it either way, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. Right. I mean, it's just I just found myself thinking is like would it have been a better story if Stephen wasn't convinced and we had the incredibly tragic ending that was possible here, where he does go to the
Yeah.
hospital and does kill Nicholas and gets caught and he gets arrested, and we're left in the space of the world not being sure what to believe here because you have these
Yeah.
two different accounts. um
I think they just spent so many episodes building up the fact that Steven is just borderline sociopathic and is bent on revenge and just I guess perhaps because he knows the truth, he just that switch flips and I don't know, just would like a little bit more to nudge in that direction maybe.
yeah, I mean, I think it works okay, and I'm not necessarily lobbying for that alternate version I
Yeah,
was just talking
yeah,
about, but I was at least thinking about it as I watched this. So I mean, I don't want to like problematically call into question her account.
hmm
But you do have the photographs, there is some space for ambiguity beyond what they gave us, right? Because I think that, think back to the earlier scene when Robert gets the photographs and the narration about how he's reacting to them. And, um, so presuming, well, okay, like, okay, we're believing Catherine's account. So everything in the photographs is an act. It's hitting on how photographic reality is not reality, even if it presents itself as such. And I'm like tempted to start talking about Roland Barthes or something like this in the photograph has been, but like, all right, but it's she didn't, okay. When Robert got mad at her, he did not give her space to tell her side of things.
He completely shut her down. Yeah.
But it also didn't seem like she was moving forward really pushing to tell him her side of things.
Yeah, and she may even admit that at the end that, she just did not, she wanted to have that part of her life gone, not introduce it into their family, and no desire or interest in telling them about it. And so I don't know. I mean, if you're confronted with that, it almost feels like your hand is forced at that point. You have to say something.
Yeah. And she doesn't
Yeah.
still. And, maybe this makes sense. She was meaningfully trying to protect Nicholas from the truth of all of this. Um, I guess there's another question there of whether this works or whether we buy this. He doesn't remember, right? You mentioned that Steven sees him in a photograph at the very end when he's burning things. That's another thing. I was like, no one noticed this before.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly.
that particular photograph would seem to indicate that Nicholas saw Jonathan raping Catherine.
Hmm.
So okay, we can start thinking about structures of repression and things like this, I suppose.
That's exactly where my mind went, is this resentment that we've seen Nicholas carry throughout this season. Is it deep seated in a moment like that? And to your point, has it been repressed? Is it something that he's been carrying with him? Is there some trauma that he's, unwilling to face? Or is that what has led to this resentment of his mother? And they've apparently over a course of some amount of time are able to confront that and reconcile in some way.
Yeah, or yeah, I mean, I think that it's from what we don't see a whole lot, but it does seem to be indicating some level of reconciliation, or I might be tempted to say, okay, well now they're sort of living in the truth, and part of the problem
Yeah.
is they just had not been.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, speaking of Nicholas, I guess though, like one thing we speculated about that this did not address was how he got out there in the middle of the sea.
That's
And we
right.
get no new information on that, right? We're basically being told, okay, he did. It just says like kind of a stupid little kid go down there with his dinghy and
Yeah.
get sucked out into the sea. And Catherine was asleep on the beach because she was exhausted because she didn't get any sleep because she'd been raped all night or whatever. Maybe that works, but I still just part of me is like, could a little kid really get out through the
Yeah.
waves and
It did make me
um
wonder, but then of course we have this version where Jonathan still goes out to save him. Did Jonathan see Nicholas observe what was happening? That he would try to do something to him? I guess I'm having a hard time with considering what happened, and then considering they're on the beach there together, literally hours after what happened that night before. What is Jonathan's incentive or motivation to go to do this heroic thing? I just he doesn't seem to be that type of person. If you're to think about what he just did, the monstrous things he did the night before, it just that
yeah.
that, that part just didn't align. I guess to me,
I mean, I guess you could just say it's a separate sort of thing
yeah,
where perhaps he is a monster in terms of what he did to Catherine, but not the kind of monster who's going to see a drowning child and let the child drown.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I guess. I mean, that's what we're asked to buy. What did you think of how he cuts his arm? I mean, clearly it fits in terms of an explanation of that wound, which you talked about before,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It makes
Square
sense that
peg,
he does it.
square peg, round hole. That was my thoughts. Just you're like forcing something in to try to just try to make sense of something that you saw. Or I don't even see why that was necessary. I'm cutting my arm, lick my blood. I didn't get any of that.
I mean, in terms of how everything fits together, it feels necessary because um, Catherine just up and left after Jonathan died.
Yeah.
So where we previously got the stuff about the wound was in the flashbacks of Stephen and Nancy going to Italy. And I don't know if that would have even been in the book, the
Yeah.
Perfect Stranger book. So
I,
there is
yeah.
a way in which the fact that Catherine is providing an explanation for that wound, how else would she have known about it? It isn't clear, right? And then maybe that factors into what makes Stephen realize, oh, she's telling the truth.
Yeah,
Um,
to have that level of intimate detail and knowledge of that, okay, that's a great point. You can, I guess, sort of align the narrative that Steve and Nancy saw this wound. They were the only ones that did, apart from the police. Catherine is referencing him cutting his arm, and so obviously would not have known that they saw the body and asked about that specifically. So yeah, there's some things that sort of lend it to, okay, you can reference something that really very few people knew, so you must be giving us this close a version of the truth as we can expect.
yeah, I think it works and it functions in that way. But at the same time, I still just keep thinking it's kind of a weird thing to do. And I don't get it, but okay, I don't understand people's kinks in various ways, I
Yeah,
suppose, and but also, well, like, wouldn't he have just like kept bleeding? Wouldn't have there been more blood involved in the whole situation? It doesn't,
exactly.
something sticks
Exactly.
in my craw a little bit about how that fits into the story, but this is the end. We're not going to get any more information. It's just, it
Nope.
does feel like we're ultimately asked to believe Catherine's version as the truth, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I made a note here is I had seen several things about this over the last week and paid attention to it, and I guess just had glossed over it as we were watching these before that leading up to episode 7, we had not seen any depictions that I can recall of real violence, sexual violence, some things that require a disclaimer at the beginning of the show. And yet they put it at the beginning of every single episode, all 7, 1 to 7. Yeah, we don't see it until 7. So by the time we get here to the finale, it's almost it's almost predicted for us or foretold us that this is what's going to take place. So it's like we should have probably seen exactly this thing coming.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it didn't really function. I just kind of ignored it, I
Yeah,
guess. But
exactly.
maybe for others it was. I didn't full. I mean, I noticed it, right? And but it was more like I was wondering, well, like, okay, what is that referring to?
Right.
More than it occurred to me, they were like, oh, it's referring to what will happen in the finale. So
Yeah.
didn't really spoil it for me. Although, from another point of view, it is kind of funny that the show is called Disclaimer, which refers to the disclaimer in The Perfect Stranger, but also
Right.
there's a disclaimer on the show Disclaimer, which informs you basically of how Disclaimer is
You
going
should
to
have been,
end.
yeah, you should have been paying attention to that all along.
So maybe they like that as a little like kind of meta move
Yeah.
or wink at us or
Yeah. I
um
I thought that's probably the case. Yeah.
yeah, there's something else I was gonna say here. What was it? Um I don't know. I mean, I did have a note about Roberts, and I feel like we sort of hit on that. Um, that worked for me. That made sense to me. That ultimately, he learns what really happened, and now he is willing to reconcile with her,
Yeah.
but she's like,
Oh, thank
"No,
God. It was just that. You didn't have an affair. Okay,
yeah,
we can,
you're
we can
just
move on
violently
now.
raped."
Yeah, he's ready to move on and she's ready to now confront it. And yeah, that's going to be a tough thing to try to reconcile.
But it did make sense to me that she would be, disturbed by that. That he's like
Yeah.
happy that it was. Um, she was sexually assaulted as opposed to had an affair. Um, and so the fact that that led them to a divorce, well, that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely does.
and I don't know anything else to talk about here. I'm left with this feeling like I
Yeah.
was going to say something 90 seconds ago that I've forgotten, but we're wrapping up. So
Yeah.
that's just how it's going to be. And I'll think of it in, an hour.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to your point, that I did find this entire show and this episode entertaining. I thought that, again, having not read this novel, don't know if it's accurate in terms of source material or anything like that. Um, I thought, as we talked about from the very beginning, the three leads of the show are just sublime in terms of what they do. I don't just felt like there was a a smoother path to land the plane, and I'm having trouble articulating what it could have been. But I don't know. It's just too much time. Maybe we need to just give Caron, a 3 hour movie instead of 7 hours of a television show. I don't know. I'm having trouble articulating it.
Yeah, we did talk about that question before, and I'm not sure. I think you could have told the story in 3 hours, two and a
Mhm.
half hours, I don't know. But is it better as a sort of 7 episode TV series? I think maybe it is. I mean, in terms of giving us a little bit more space to get to know the characters. It dragged maybe a little bit at certain points where maybe it could have been tightened up a little. I don't have a big criticism on that front. I'm not going to come on here and say it should have just been a movie.
Yeah.
Um, I
I mean,
do
to
think,
my knowledge, this is his first foray into television. So I mean, it's in terms of the visual and production value of this. We've talked about this plenty before, but I mean, it's quite well done. So I mean, it's obviously a major shift between these two mediums.
yeah, I mean, I thought it was very well done, very well directed, and all of
Yeah.
that. So, and I like TV. So, yeah, I'm not going to say it should have been a movie or anything like that. I guess where I land in terms of kind of putting a bow on my position on the series and the ending is personally, perhaps I would have enjoyed it more with a bit more ambiguity. And I
Yep.
find it a little surprising that we didn't get that we're still getting, we're getting her perspective, but then are also basically told, and that is true, you know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Stephen believes it, which is Robert to believe it, and everyone believes that it's true. But there's nothing to really, you could call it into question if you wanted to, but it
Yeah.
almost feels like if you did, you'd be misogynist or something, right? Like it really lands and like this is what happened and it's true. So
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah. I think the one other, this is a minor nitpick, and I would have had a bigger problem with it if a different path had occurred here. But I don't know. It seems like Catherine wakes up like 6 minutes after Stephen leaves, and
Yeah.
he's put these two or three sleeping pills in her tea. And so she's like, minutes behind him getting to the hospital. I was anticipating her getting there and by her presence stopping him from killing Nicholas. And I was like, man, this is a real stretch that you're going to make me believe that he drugged her. And despite what we heard about how powerful these sleeping pills are, she's awake a few minutes later and, just on her way to go confront him. In the end, that didn't end up mattering, but I was prepared for it to matter, I guess.
Yeah. And she chokes some coffee. But see, I don't
Yeah.
think that's the thing. I think if we're going to read this as plausible, it's the adrenaline of it,
Yeah.
right? It's um the anxiety, the terror, the panic that Stephen is on the way to the hospital to kill her son.
Yeah.
Um, and I can buy that on that front. I do, however, think that throughout that whole series of events, she should have been really, really loopy.
I agree. Yes.
So I don't know I don't know that it played that way. She
Yeah.
seemed
A
that's my
half a
critique.
pot of iced coffee is not going to take away the effects of what should be, making her pass out right now.
Right. She seems maybe a little bit too normal. And
Yeah.
I don't know about the getting out of the cab and running thing and whether, like I think she'd fall down or something. She should have been
Right.
like more like she was drunk. I guess,
Exactly.
basically. And
Exactly.
they didn't really do that. So, you know, perhaps that's fine. It's not that's yeah, it's not a major criticism. It's a TV show, it's fiction, but you're right. It is kind of like, oh no, I took sleeping pills, pass out, wakes up,
Makes up to you.
chug some coffee, and then basically she's good. That's all I'm saying. She should be
Yeah. Yeah. That I
if the
agree.
adrenaline's keeping her going, she should at least be like, what's
Yeah. Yeah.
going on?
Well, if we're getting to
Um,
that level of detail, it must mean that we were really paying attention and we really, had some attachment to this. So
I remember what I was going to ask you, and I'm curious. Um, we got screeners for this, so I'm assuming it was the same for you. But you watch the screeners with the subtitles on?
I do. Yep.
So during the scenes with Catherine and Nicola and Jonathan in the past, what I saw was a whole bunch of subtitles of dialogue that I did not hear.
Same.
You have that same experience?
Same experience where you're sort of there's this obviously there's music on top of it. There's I think some grieving or some real traumatic sounds, and then there's lines that apparently Jonathan is saying mostly about telling her what she should do, but that's sort of covered up. Not quite sure maybe understand what the reasoning is for that, but that was my experience as well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I kind of get the artistic decision
Yeah,
to not have that dialogue be something that we're hearing.
yeah,
But I thought it was kind of interesting that then it was there in the subtitles. And, you know, I'm not sure that most people have the subtitles on.
yeah.
I think it's become more common, which
I think so. Yeah,
good job, people. I used to be a weirdo 25 years ago. And so, but probably a lot of people didn't. So yeah, that was something that was occurring to me to
yeah,
mention that. And I'm curious about the experience of if people watched it and didn't have the subtitles on and got that silence, maybe it would land a little bit differently. You've got two possible experiences here where
that's
because like I
true.
was reading what he was saying, but you
I
couldn't hear
was
it.
too. Yeah, because I couldn't hear it certainly, so I was reading as well.
So kind of an interesting move. I wonder if they, you know, almost did that in post production, decided, well, let's actually not let you hear this dialogue. They were actually saying the lines, and then when they were putting it together, said, you know what, let's make this like
Yeah,
more um silent, or you know, it does feed into the feel of the scene in a way that I thought
yeah,
made sense. But yeah,
yeah.
um, interesting that the subtitles are there though. It's just, um, but cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think we've covered the bases there. Except glad we did this. I think interesting story, maybe not quite the can't get ahead of it mystery that some people were pitching it to be, but really, I mean, this was an entertaining show.
Yeah, agreed. Um, yeah, I don't know if that I felt like it was much of a mystery,
Yeah.
but you know, it's like I suppose there were questions and then
Yeah.
answers. So fine, fair enough. All right, cool. So from here, we're gonna start digging into Silo season two. So hopefully people are interested in following along with us, watching Silo. It's a season two of Silo. So of course, if you haven't watched Silo at all, you have some catching up to do. We watched season one, and the next week, season two premieres on November 15th. Um, I wrote on season one on the site. If you want to go look at the recaps I wrote episode by episode, my current plan is Ryan's going to write on season two, and then we're also going to be talking about it on the podcast. So we'll have
Yes.
things for you to listen to and things for you to read, and that's about as far as we can go. I mean, we're kind of going whole hog on the silo
Yeah.
coverage.
And there
Um,
are there are short stories that this is based on if you want to consume that as well. I may try to digest one of those this week before we get back into season two.
right on, yeah. So looking forward to that. We'll be back next week. Talk about Silo season two premiere. I haven't checked yet if it's just one episode. I think it's just one episode.
I think I checked on this. It's one episode per week for 8 or 10 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, good. All right. So thanks as always for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave us a good rating, review, and so on and so forth. If you're checking out this part on the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give the thumbs up to the video. Really appreciate it. Check out TVObsessive.com. You can follow us on social media. You search for TV Obsessive, you should find us. And we'll see you next week.
All right, see you next week for Silo.